Welcome to day 99 of 66 in 26, our journey to read through all 66 books of the Bible in 2026. We're back in the Old Testament book of Exodus today, chapters 5 through 8. If you remember last week, we were introduced to Moses as the man who is going to deliver God's people from slavery in Egypt. Moses comes now to Pharaoh for the first time to demand that he release the Israelites from their slavery, their forced labor. They're making bricks. And Pharaoh's response actually is to make everything even more harsh for the Israelites. Not only do they have to make bricks, but now they have to gather the straw that is needed to make their bricks. And so everything becomes even more difficult for the Israelites. And sometimes this happens with when believers want to do what's right and to worship the Lord, to share the good news of the Lord. The response from the world is not always kind. And sometimes those who do not believe in God, those who reject Jesus, will actually bring down hardship upon believers, and we can choose to see that as God's hand making it harder, or we can see what truly is happening, and that is the world's response is just making it hard. It's not the Lord's desire that we suffer more, and it wasn't the Lord's desire that the Israelites suffer more, but that's what Pharaoh brought upon them. So God has to demonstrate to Pharaoh, who is seen in Egypt as a godlike figure, someone who is either a god or the son of the gods. And so God has to demonstrate his power over Moses. We see 4 of 10 plagues in these chapters. They're going to be ultimately 10 plagues. We see the first 4 of those in these chapters today as God begins to show Pharaoh who's boss and who really is in control over all things. And we see the water turn to blood, and we see the abundance of frogs, and we see the gnats or the mosquitoes and the flies. And then at first we're seeing the magicians, the sorcerers of the Egyptians who were able to duplicate or mimic those miracles, but then they reach their limit. They're no longer able to do those miracles, which they were probably doing by demonic power anyway. And now the Lord is able to demonstrate having control over creation much more than the magicians and the sorcerers. And so then, even though Pharaoh's heart is hard, there are many who start to see that the Lord truly does have power. And then we also see this amazing distinction. Not only is God able to bring the flies, for instance, but he's able to distinguish between the Egyptians and the Israelites. So the Egyptians feel the judgment and wrath of God, but the Israelites are spared. And that distinction we'll see carried out through the other plagues as well, as the Israelites are spared from that judgment, even as Pharaoh and the Egyptians are experiencing it. And that'll play out then in God distinguishing between those who follow him and those who don't in the Exodus, the story that's coming in the next week or two as we continue to read in the book of Exodus, seeing God's miraculous story, a deliverance for his people out of Egypt.